The 10 Commandments. There is a review that you can see on your FSO, but we'll go through this. So creating meaningful hyperlinks, just like when I ask you to send a hyperlink that says before and one that says after, that tells me what I'm going to get when I select that. It's really important. It's also important for screen readers to know what somebody would get if they were to click on it. Please make sure that you open these in a new browser window. That's true if anybody's on your site. You don't want to send them away from your site. It's also true if I'm grading a class and I'm 5 pages deep into your website, but now I have to, go back and find the grading page. Now, obviously, I do right-click and open it, so I don't have to do that, but that's only because I'm not sure every student is selecting to make sure it opens in a new browser, and that's really what I'm hoping you'll do. That's really preferred and the professional thing to do. So naming them, this is good. Click here for more. That explains nothing. A screen reader would just say, click here for more, and somebody with low vision wouldn't know what they're going to get. We feel a little, not tricked, but baited just a little, like I have to click here to know what I'm getting. And then this is just downright long. So Google links, we all know those aren't gorgeous. You can use bit.ly or tinyURL to condense those, but really you can just rename your links. Okay. As this case, so example proposal, much better, right? I know exactly what that is. We've had all kinds of things turned in. Week 1 practice project inventory, that's great. Blow your mind, well, that's catchy, but I have no idea if I want to click there, right? So those are just some of the examples we get. And you know where to insert your links and how to make sure that it opens in a new tab, I'm sure by now. Okay. Headings and lists. When you go to build your site, if you have a lot of content, and you will in the background story of this food truck, you're going to need to edit it so there's less scrolling. You could use headers, you can use lists, but we need to avoid dense blocks of text, okay? We don't want to do that to you, have long, paragraphs that are not easy to navigate. Yeah, so it's a great way to tell people what they need to know quickly, right? Title, and there we go. Now, I do have you submit using a heading 1. That helps when you submit your work, your parts, to keep them separated and organized, and it gets you in the habit of using that. So that's a request there. But you can see it's broken down. And we don't do this to you because that would just be mean, right? You'd have to go through and break it down yourself. So we do it. Center a line. We ask you not to do that. The only time to do that is if you have headers and you have just a few lines under that. It makes it really hard for readability. But as you can see here, the eye returns to the same place when it's left aligned, and it also provides a straight edge, which helps your site stay clean. So I will always ask you to left align. Okay. There is a template, there's more than one, that will have it centered, but that's really only for a few lines that you can get away with that. Okay. So yes, headers can be centered. That would be fine. And like I said, you will see some that aren't, but if you can left align it, it's going to be cleaner for you. You'll be given content in a folder, in your Google folder, but let's not copy and paste that content because it won't bring the format with it. It's going to adopt the formatting of the template, okay? So, it might look great, but when you paste it in, it's going to change everything. So you need to take out the formatting before you put it in. Okay? So enter the text. At the same time, when you enter the text, it will no longer be a picture of words. Some students will try and submit the PDF of the menu or the location list, and that's just a picture of words at that point. None of it is searchable throughout the site. None of it is found through a web browser like Google. It just won't come up. So a picture of words is just that. It is not actual content that we're trying to get across. So for SEO, as I explained, and usability, again, a screen reader, somebody with low vision, isn't going to be able to find that type of taco that they're looking for in the image of the menu, okay? We'll see that a lot in resumes. You want your resume to have entered content. Even if you have a beautifully laid out page, you want to still enter that so that a potential employer can find your skills, can find those things that you are listing. They won't be able to otherwise. Okay. Consistent padding. Oh my goodness, this is so important. Whether it's a painting, art, layout, design, a car, it doesn't matter. Anything that is designed needs to have some relief. We can't just have a lot of ornamentation because that will be completely lost among all the ornamentation. That's sort of like bolding an entire paragraph. If everything is bolded, nothing is bolded. So breathing room is that relief. It's the white space or whatever it is, but it allows us to take in the more intense content that we're reading. So that is super important. Think of white space, or we call it white space, but you might have a gray background or blue, whatever. Space is also an element of art. It's just as important. So this at the top looks like it's cut and paste. It looks like an afterthought. It looks like somebody was in a hurry and they just slapped something together. You really have to work at it to make this look like a style. And when I see it, I know that it isn't, usually. In this case, it's cool. This still doesn't give enough breathing room, but this gives us the padding we need, and you can adjust the padding in Wix. Okay, that makes it seem like it was intentional. It's easier to read and breathe, and we don't feel so cramped. Okay, same with an object like this. And when I say to keep things simple, if we don't need a star on our page, we probably shouldn't put it there. Okay? If it's not supporting the content for some reason, we don't need it, usually. Okay. But you can see this looks more important. This just looks like we've tried to find room for it. Okay. Color contrast. So when you have a background, like I was talking about earlier, maybe a video of rolling waves or water or something, and you put something on top of it, it can be very difficult to read. And so we want to ensure we have enough difference in the texture and enough difference in the color. So if you're going to use, for example, gray, that's not going to be easy to read against a blue background. Okay. Orange, a little better, but not as good as this right here, right? So that's a little easier to read because of the contrast. This, we can't read at all now, right? The white on white doesn't work. We can read this, and we can certainly read this, and we can read that. So you always want to go for readability. As much as we love aesthetics, and believe me, I do, we have to choose readability over aesthetics every time. If we have to let go of aesthetics, that's fine. We have to make sure something is very clear and easy to read. Okay, images, titles, and descriptions. So it's like dotting your I's and crossing your T's. If you've made a presentation before in PowerPoint or Keynote, have the ability to go under images, click your image and go under images and name that image. And so what that does is, again, SEO, search engine optimization, it can find those images. That's why when you go to look for a church and you've got a Corvette in the foreground, that's because somebody also put the name Corvette. They put church, Corvette, and that's why you get all these varied images that come up in your search. But do name your images and name them before you upload them. Okay, because in many cases, some of the galleries, if you click on it, it's going to have the name of the file come up very big. And if it's, just a string of numbers, that's not going to work. And certainly a string of numbers doesn't work in SEO. Okay. So for screen readers, again, people with low vision, it's going through and it's reading everything that is there. It would just read a string of numbers. So the time to name your file is when you upload it. When you get into Wix, you'll have an opportunity to go into settings, click that image, go into settings, and it will say, tell Google about this image. You'll put something very short and descriptive. Okay. This particular template will bring the name up. Now, in this situation, this was the name of the file, but you don't need to say close up or tortilla chips or corn. You can say tortilla chips, or if you want, and edit that down is fine. And we talked about why. Minding the fold. When I was about your age, I worked for a newspaper while I was in college. And this is where this term comes from, minding the fold, because when someone had the front page, for example, and whether it was a news, an airport newsstand, or whether it was one of these standing, metal delivery systems they had with in front of restaurants or what have you, you only saw the top of the first page, the A section. And that was really prime real estate. That was the most important part of the newspaper. We only had one person who was allowed to lay out that page. Right? I got to do it twice, but it wasn't my job. One person was allocated to laying out the front page of the newspaper. But in web design, it might be mind the scroll. Okay, we don't want our user, the site visitor, to have to click too often or scroll too much to find the content they're looking for. We want to make things as simple as possible for them. Okay, so if it seems overly simple, no such thing. Okay, we want to minimize scrolling and mind the fold. So if you have a contact page and we click on that in the navigation, we want the contact form or information to show up above the bottom of the screen, because we've promised our visitor that that's what they're going to find when they select that. Right? So it can be very frustrating otherwise if what we've told them is on this page and they have to scroll down past a beautiful photo to get to that information they're looking for. Okay. So minding the scroll. Now, Full Sail does this really well. There is a lot of information above the scroll, and they've laid it out simply because that's the most important thing, but they still had to get all this in, and you will have that with a client. A client will try and give you everything, and it will all be important. Your first job is to ask them what's the priority so that you can make some choices, but sometimes you have to walk the client through that because they think it's all equally important. So, for example, if you were to come to this page, you won't need more than 7 pages, but here we have all these different things. We have touring the campus, scholarship content, a search, all these different things. And then we have areas of study. Now, this is showing them a lot of what they're looking for, right? This is the target audience and doing something cool in a cool space. So that's important. And I've cut this off for this image, but they can see that below here is all the areas of study. And so if that's what they're looking for, they get a tip, they get a little teaser that that's there. So that's okay if that's what they're looking for. It's not, if they want that, they'll scroll. So that's the thing. If there's a huge payoff for them, either because it's what they're looking for or it's interesting, then they'll scroll. Okay. But we have to ask ourselves if what we're putting below the scroll is going to be worth it to them. Okay. Okay. What you'll be doing for each of your assignments is submitting a few lines to describe what it is, the purpose that is of that assignment. And that will just help you articulate and clarify in your mind why you're doing what you're doing. You don't have to put much, just a simple rationale of why you're doing it, a little bit of context for what your content is. When you get to week 3 and you start to put maybe a little bit of your work on a page, you're going to need to have what we call an asset guide. You will definitely submit asset guides when you get to web design. And that's simply something that tells the user or the visitor what that particular assignment is. I'm sorry, that project was, like, what was your role in that? You'll say the title of the piece, if it's a video, were you the director, the writer, or the cinematographer, editor, or all of these things? So we need to offer a little bit of context so that they know what your role was. If it's an ad, what software did you use? Right? Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator. So it's important that they know. Okay. So like I said, you won't necessarily, I don't know that you're necessarily going to be held accountable to asset guides this month, but you definitely will be when you get to web design. Each of your projects will have to have an asset guide to go with it. It's just a few lines, but it's context. Do you have any questions about those very important 10 things?
I'm good. I think I got everything.
Okay.
Yeah, that was straightforward. I think I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. You got the link to come to this class. There is the 10 Commandments slides that will just be reminders for you. You can just toggle through those. Or you can watch the whole archives. These things are sprinkled throughout.